Hi there, Stratoloungers and other assorted vagrants, migrants, layabouts, scalawags, jackanapes, and other viewers of the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm Bill Whittle, your host. It's Wednesday at 6 o'clock. It's our standard time. And that means it's time for Stratosphere Lounge number 73. Number 73. That's absolutely pretty amazing. I know I keep saying it's amazing, but the more of them I do, the more amazed I am that we did this many. And there's more to come. So, it's great to be here. Great to see all of you out there again. See all of you out there again. But been a busy couple of days. I got spent a lot of today getting some sleep. Actually, was up very late last night finishing this Benghazi firewall. Normally, excuse me, I would have had it done considerably earlier. I hadn't realized how much extra post-production there was on this one. I'll put a link up to it tomorrow. I guess most of you haven't seen it yet, but it's pretty compelling. I think I'll probably put this in the description tomorrow. It's absolutely amazing. I do a lot of work that's opinion and synthesis of ideas and that sort of thing. But the best work I do certainly is the work that I have to do the least on, and that really consists honestly of just letting the power of the truth just spoken without any hesitation or fear, without any inflection, without any interpretation, certainly without any embellishment. If you simply just speak the truth, lay out what actually happened, then there's nothing you can do to beat that in terms of just impact. So when we were looking at this Benghazi thing, I like to think anyway, that this one has the same kind of feel that the atomic bombs video has and that the Trayvon Martin video had, in the sense that there's no opinion here. There's no commentary. It's not commentary. It's just here's what happened, and let that do the talking. And I think probably at the most you might, and this is not acting on my part, you might want to. There's a sense in the Benghazi video, as in the atomic bomb video, and as in the Trayvon Martin video, of a sense of kind of like repressed, sort of deeply contained anger, and that is not something that's performance on my part. You can't talk about things like Doherty and Woods fighting for 2.5 hours underneath the eyes of a Predator drone 6 hours after the attack started without getting a little choked up about that. But it's up at Truth Revolt now. I'm going to put a link to it tomorrow morning on Facebook and push it out to all of you good people. So just more of a tease more than anything. But anyway, it's one of the few that I've done that is basically just here's the facts, and the facts are pretty damning. So I'm very, very proud of it. It took about 3 or 4 times longer than a standard firewall. The firewall is actually very complex to do visually, and this one was 3 or 4 times more complex than the other ones. First of all, it's almost twice as long. It's just over 10 minutes. Unlike, or rather, I suppose I should say, like the atom bomb video, which was like 17 or something. We're never going that length again. Or the Trayvon Martin video, if you just get through the facts as fast as you can, people will probably stay with you. But there are many times more photographs than we normally use because there's a lot of points that have to be made. We had a little countdown clock listing the time and the date of everything that happened. That was basically another whole picture pass on top of it. Had to be generated and inserted and timed and rendered and all that other stuff. So anyway, you can see it right now at Truth Revolt. If you go to truthrevolt.org, I think it's on the front page right there for those of you watching the show live. And it will, again, I'll push it out hard tomorrow on the front page. Hopefully we'll start seeing some links for it. I think it needs to be said, that lowlife malcontent Andrew Clavin, who happens to be on the other side of that wall as we speak, actually said, he was very kind comments, and he said they ought to read this out during the congressional hearings. I think they ought to read something out during the congressional hearings. They don't have to read my video, but it wouldn't be bad if they read a transcript of what actually happened, because when you read that transcript, you'll find it's incompetence all the way up to the night of the attack, and then mendacity after it. And competence and character, those are the 2 points that we're talking about on the video, and those are the 2 things that we have a right to ask about our elected leaders. Are they competent, and what is their character? In fact, I think that's really all we need to know about them, honestly. I don't have a big problem with personal peccadillos with public officials. I'm much more concerned with their competence and their character. And in the case of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, I don't think much of either of them. Anyway, that's that. So that was good. And then Monday was a big day too. Big day. Monday we actually signed the lease on the new space. We've been trying to get that done for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. Seriously looking at a place for 2 or 3 months. And then we found a place that we liked about 5 weeks ago now, I guess. Did the little walkthrough video a couple weeks ago, probably almost a month ago now. Just about to go down and sign it, actually. And then, as it turns out, I have a very, very, very good man who's just one of you guys, just somebody who likes the work, offered to do the legal work on it, and I sent it to him, and he was able to negotiate a lot of stuff on the lease that was really important, and which I would have just walked into like a little lamb, as I always do. So thanks a lot out there. You know who you are, MS, and very, very grateful for all the work on that. But that took considerably more time than we thought. But anyway, we signed the lease on Monday. So we're in business. Praise Vectron. God bless you, Dave Big Booty. He's a Michelin Web Vectron fan that'll never get old with me. So anyway, the good news is we got the lease signed. They say probably 10 days to get the carpet in, which seems a little long, but that's okay. So they're guaranteeing occupancy on July 1st. We're hoping to get in before then. But I would say early July. I don't want to make any promises. I learned from the last go-round about making promises I can't keep. So just simply as a target, we are hoping to kind of launch a Mark II BillWhittle.com website on 4th of July. We won't do that until the content is on the shelf. So if it's ready by the 4th of July, and we're working to get it ready by the 4th of July, then we'll do it on the 4th of July. But if it's not ready, we're gonna open the doors to the store after we have the product on the shelves instead of before, like last time. So I don't want to get myself ever in a situation again where I have to apologize for promises that I wasn't able to keep. At least I certainly don't want to make a habit of it. So anyway, the point of all this is that office will provide us with a lot of capability that we don't have now. It will, for instance, something that's actually very simple. It may not sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal. Currently here at the office, we have a green screen studio down at the end of the hall there where we shoot the firewalls, and Jeremy also shoots all of the Prager videos here, and a lot of other things get done here. But it's down the hall, and there's different lights for different people, and it's not really convenient. In the new office, we're going to have a green screen section of the wall. We're going to have lights and cameras set up, and they're never going to move. And it literally is going to be like, turn them on, walk in and do it. And that will allow me to do a lot more content than I'm able to do right now. One of the things of interest to you Strata Loungers out there is we are going to really up the look of this show. Just to tell you what that's going to be like, because we're going to actually have a fairly brief show today. We are going to have, if you saw the walkthrough of the office space, which you did a couple of Stratosphere lounges ago, as you come in, there's going to be an entire wall on the left that's in kind of a little alcove. And we're going to put the Stratosphere Lounge logo, this guy. That's going to take up a whole wall, and we're going to offset it from the wall, and we'll get that kind of cool LED glow that you can see behind us there, and it's going to be just badass. So that's going to be like a whole wall of the new office space. I'm going to put a chair in front of that, a couple of nice chairs, and then when I get to the new studio space, even though we'll do some guest shows, because a lot of people like to have in line on as a guest, and I'd like to do occasional interviews on the Stratosphere Lounge one-on-one kind of guest kind of things. They're fun. But the Stratosphere Lounge is basically, me just talking to you guys and taking your questions. But even so, with a whole wall over there and a nice mural, and with the fact that we're going to buy 3 or 4 matching HD cameras, we will be able to do the show with 3 cameras. We'll be able to do 3 inputs. Right now, Ustream is set up to do that. We'll be able to do 3 cameras. We'll have a wide and a close-up, at least that. And if we've got a guest, we'll have crossing close-ups and a wide. We'll have our incredibly talented and lovely and extremely, extremely dedicated operations manager, Desiree Gabrielle will be sitting there off on the computer, and she'll be switching the videos, so there'll be cuts, and there'll be, it'll be dynamically improved. So that'll be cool. But again, the main thing about the new Office Space is it allows us to do new content. A fair amount of the new content will be members-only content because we've the current members at BillWhittle.com have been extraordinarily good soldiers. They've been taking a lot of abuse, frankly, in terms of the disappointments that we had and the letdowns that we had in terms of getting the stuff out there. Virtually every single one of them just soldiered on through that, and they've been very, very generous with their memberships. And better late than never, we have to start providing more members-only content for members, and hopefully, obviously, to try to recruit new members. So I know I've talked about this before. I just want to get over real quick because we are doing a kind of a time over target episode tonight. I'm in a great place. I don't want to sound like this is a problem because it's not. I close every show that we do with these guys is to thank all of you, members and non-members, for the support over the years and for the incredible, life that you've been able to give me. So here's the situation as it exists now. If I have a membership-driven website, which I do have finally, that gives me, ultimately, it gives me freedom. It gives me the chance to say what I want to say, do what I want to do without restrictions being placed on me, without having to worry about, any of that stuff. It gives me the freedom. It gives me a base of operations. It gives me a chance to develop the movies, which we'll be talking about soon because I've had a lot of wheels spinning in the sand trying to get this office up and going. Excuse me, a little tickle cough. I think it's an acid reflux thing. And so we're actually getting into the place where we're actually to do this. So the one thing I know categorically, and I've never had any doubt about this at all, is that I cannot and will not and have no desire to start making members only stuff that's already been available for everybody. I can't take stuff that I'm doing and start putting it behind a membership firewall. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's decent and moral. I think it's immoral in a way. At the same time, I do have an obligation to produce stuff for the members because they are paying and they are entitled to get something for their membership thing. So as I mentioned before, just to recap for our show today, what I think is a great compromise is this: we're going to do, when we kind of relaunch the version 2 thing, we're going to have 3 new shows at BillWhittle.com. One of them is called Time Over Target, which I'll get to in a minute. One of them is called Bill Me, Bill/Me. And Bill Me is a Google Meetup thing where instead of me taking an individual question, I'll be able to talk to a member. We'll just do split screen webcam for 15 minutes. So if you're a member and you want to talk to me about anything, you want to talk about Scotch, you want to talk about football, you want to talk about politics, whatever you want to do, we'll just sit and chat for 15 minutes and ask me whatever you want to, and we'll just answer. So we'll do 5 of those a week in one shoot session. And then that'll go out every afternoon, 5 days a week to the members. Time Over Target will go out every morning, 5 days a week to the members. But the part I think is fair, and the part I think I'm really trying to be fair, is that on Friday, we will do a mix down of the best of that week's Time Over Target. And on Saturday, we'll push that out to our Facebook page. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be available to everybody. So if we do 5 3-minute Time Over Target segments for members every week, on Friday, we will edit down and release on Saturday maybe a 7, 8, 10-minute best of Time Over Target. And you don't have to be a member to watch that. And we really want to make it clear that we're not trying to force people into memberships. I have a management problem, and that is I've got to provide something for these members. They deserve it. And at the same time, I don't want anybody to feel like this is, coercive or, you're going to have to get in the box and start ponying up. So there will be more free content whether you're a member or not. And likewise, the afternoon show, Bill Me, at the end of the week, we will edit that together. And again, that'll go out on Sunday, Best of Bill Me on Sunday, for free for everybody. And then the other show we're going to do that I'm actually more excited about than just about anything. We have a live comment stream over here. And Guatemalan Water Snake just said, I have a sister who hosts a show called Sue Me. It's awesome, man. Great comment. Yeah, it's fabulous. Great job. So Sue Me's coming. Don't you worry. That'll be next year after I start to get a little traction on this administration. So we'll have a best of on Sunday for Bill Me, best of on Saturday for Time Over Target. So more free stuff for everybody and more stuff for the members. But as I was saying, the show I'm most excited about is a show that I had in mind for a while, and the name came from you find Stratosphere Lounge people, and it's called Speakeasy. And we're going to rent a theater here in North Hollywood. There's 50-seat theaters, there's 100-seat theaters, there's 200-seat theaters. We'll find out how many people can come, and if we've got the place booked, we'll do it. We know we have enough friends in town to be able to do 100 people a month. 100 people one times a month. That should be no problem at all. So here's how Speakeasy will go. Once a month, we'll rent this theater. They've got their own cameras, their own mics and everything. The set will be a black box set, which means basically just black background, but there'll be a couch and a couple of chairs, and it'll feel like a living room. And I'll come out and we'll bring out our 3 guests, hopefully Drew and Jeremy Boring and Mike Walsh and Ben Shapiro, Zoe, all these people. I just did a session, trifecta session with Ebony Williams, who's terrific. So those kind of things. Whoever's in town, you never know. Maybe, Glenn Reynolds is in town occasionally. We'll get Glenn out there. The point of Speakeasy is that it's supposed to be what we sound like when we talk to each other about politics. So as I've said before, if it turns out it's a kind of Andrew, what's your position on the Palestinian issue? Then that shows a catastrophic failure. There's hundreds of those, and I'm not interested in doing that. What I want to have is, dude, are you trotting this thing out again? Are you going to put this stinking dead animal carcass on the floor in front of us again and try and sell this to us again? Dude, seriously, it's over. It's over. That kind of thing. It should be just a lot of towel snapping and a lot of fun. So that will be shot once a month. We might try to make it we're not going to commit to this right off, but as we get a little more familiar with it, I think it probably makes sense to make it something like, the first Thursday of the month or the second Tuesday, whatever. And that will be available. Seats will be available to members first, and then if the members don't sell out, and I don't suppose they will because it is in L.A., then they'll go out to everybody, and if you want to get a ticket, you show up, and we'll have some refreshments, and after the show, we'll all hang out and chat for a while. But that will be fun. Now, the beautiful thing about Speakeasy is it'll be a 2-hour shoot, more or less, probably 2.5 hours with the tails on each end. And I may swear like a sailor. Thanks for asking, Jay Gilchrist one. But the point of Speakeasy is that there'll be 4 of us on stage, and there will be an audience full of people and a microphone, and one by one, we will go and pick somebody out of the audience. We're not going to have the questions in advance. We're not going to know what the questions are. We're not going to screen the questions. We don't know. And if you want to insert some kind of progressive, moles in there, fabulous. Actually, I'm looking forward to that. That would be fun. And so, Jeremy will pick somebody from the audience. I'll pick from somebody from the audience. Zoe will pick from somebody from the audience. And we'll do that twice. That'll give us 8 questions. We'll do about 15 minutes on a topic. So 8 15-minute segments is 2 hours. Round numbers, we'll shoot about 2 hours, 2.5 hours once a month. And then that means that for 4 weeks, we will have 2 segments per week for 4 weeks. Then we go do it again. The way we'll handle that is one of those 15-minute segments will be for members only, at least for a month or 2. And then the other 15-minute segment will be for everybody. If you want to see more Speakeasy, become a member at BillWhittle.com. But if you don't, that's fine too. You're still getting an extra hour a month of free stuff. So that's the plan, and it's the best compromise I can come up with. I think it's not only fair, I think it's generous and cool and fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. All of this is predicated on the new office space. Sign the lease on Monday. So it's actually happening. It's not just talk. It's moving. So that's great. So let's get back to the business at hand today, because I've got to kind of get caught up on some of the things that I did. Will alcohol be solved, Sarge? As far as I know, it will be. I don't want to contribute to riots. North Hollywood has a problem with these kind of things. But if it's not a whole lot of trouble, if the license already exists in the theater, then the answer is yes. If it doesn't already exist, then the answer is no. So we'll find out. We'll try to find a theater that has a beer and liquor license, a beer and wine license. So that's that. So that's Speakeasy. So time over target. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a sort of a dress rehearsal for time over target. Time over target is a term that came to us from Stratosphere Lounge. Every day we will do in the morning. We'll put it up the night before. So every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern and 5 a.m. Pacific, we'll put it up the previous night. There will be a time over target for members in their waiting for them on the website in the members only section. And time over target is a bit like hot seat at PJ. But what it is really is it will be a suggestion from a member about a topic, and I will do 3 minutes, and there will be a countdown clock on the screen, kind of like the countdown clock we had with the Benghazi video. There'll be a countdown clock over screen. I'm going to shoot it against a green screen. The background video will be, all that great, smart bomb footage, primarily from Gulf One. You don't see too much of it anymore because I guess mostly they're GPS-guided bombs now. But the original video TV camera footage of stuff going down smokestacks and all that kind of night vision over Baghdad kind of stuff, that's probably the look I think we're going to go for. And so we're going to, I just asked, am I going to clock myself? I am going to clock myself, and the clock's going to be, I'm going to be looking at a timer off camera. And then when we go to post on it, we'll mat me out, put the bomb target footage in the background to give it a little look, spice it up a little bit because it's more interesting that way. And we'll have a countdown clock down there, and I'm going to have to just basically develop the discipline to stop at 3 minutes because that's when the time's going to run out. I actually have a thought, and I may actually do this. In fact, the great thing about rehearsing is you get to learn all these cool things. Now that I think about it, I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this. I actually think that the thing to do would be when that countdown clock reaches 0, the screen goes to static. It's like the last thing you see in the background is a bomb. Actually, the thing just goes to static, even if it's in mid-sentence. In fact, that's actually better, isn't it? It's even better if it happens in mid-sentence. So hopefully I'll have the idea more or less wrapped up by then, and I can just go, and 3, 2, 1, sayonara. So I've never had to do that before. I've had to do segments where somebody says, try to keep it down to 3 or 4 minutes, and so that gets me down to around 9 or 10. But I've never had to do a segment where the clock just stopped. But I think that'll be cool and fun and a challenge. So I took some questions, took 12 questions from the Stratosphere Lounge Facebook post today, and we'll do those 12 questions. And some of them are extremely complex, very complex. I tried to make sure that the questions weren't so long that they exceeded 3 minutes. And by the way, the time asked reading the question doesn't count against the answer time. I have 3 minutes of answer. The clock's going to start the second I start answering. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'll try and get this cough taken care of. So we got 12 of them, and at 3 minutes each, that's 36 minutes, so probably another 40 minutes will be done. I'll get out of here and catch up on some of the things I need to do today, but it's a great practice thing. We may do some more of these. By the way, before I forget, I hope I don't forget this. I'm going to put a little marker down now. I had some questions about SpaceX. I think I got one I'm going to take, 2 on space I'm going to take. Saw something about a new warp drive stuff and some cool renderings about an Enterprise they ship an actual warp drive ship, CGI renderings, obviously. But Interstellar is coming out. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for Interstellar, but the trailer for Interstellar takes faster than light travel. We never really know what it's going to look like, but the great thing about the Interstellar trailer is it's shocking. It's just dramatically different. We're so used to the Star Trek, the star feels. There's a lot of people have done a lot of work on what it would look like looking out the window of a faster than light ship, and it looks to me like Interstellar is going to take a very interesting and on-target look at that. Nolan's awesome. He's a great director. So anyway, I think next week we'll do a space-only episode. I got a couple questions on space here, I think. Some of these questions are difficult. Some of them are weird. I copied them, but I did not think about them because I copied them just a few moments ago. So let's do our time over target rehearsal. I've got my little iPad thing holding up here. I wish I'd had it mounted in the screen so that you could see it, but I really couldn't pull that off. So let's get going. Boy, that's annoying. Okay, first question comes from Michael Stack, and his question is, do you think non-physical objective truths, such as right and wrong, would necessarily point towards a creator of some sort? If you have a little stopwatch at home, just to keep me honest, we'll all go together and mark. Do I think objective truths necessarily point towards a creator of some point? My attitude towards the possibility of a creator has opened enormously. I've become not only more inclined to believe it, but inclined to believe it. With that said, intellectual honesty is important for me, and so I would have to give you my honest answer, Michael, and I think not necessarily. I think the entire idea of objective truths is something that is a product of reason and rationality, but when you really get down to it, all of our psychology is fundamentally based on our genetics. All of our morality, what we consider to be offensive and shocking and horrible, are something that all of our cultures hold in common. Now, that definitely means there's something deeper than cultural differences. Everybody's against murder. Incest is a common taboo. Most of the fundamental moral truths that we believe in are shared by virtually everybody on the planet. Now, that's saying that there's something bigger than opinions. It's deeper than opinions. There's no question it's deeper than opinions. And many people think that's due to a higher truth that's evidence of God. Andrew Klavan makes this argument all the time, and he makes a compelling case. The question wasn't whether do I believe that's the case. The question was whether I think it necessarily is the case. And I don't think it is necessarily the case. I think that if you were to take the evolutionary argument, you could and assume that there is no creator. You've got to make this assumption and argue with it honestly. What you would come to then is you would be able to say that there are a series of behaviors that are encoded in our genetics that are successful. And so the question then becomes, does these ideas of moral truth give an evolutionary advantage to the gene carriers that carry that particular gene? And I think the answer is clearly yes. Societies and cultures that can band together to defend common ideals, where the common ideals aid everybody, where they're good for the entire gene pool, then you can make a case for universal truths and universal beliefs like right and wrong have a survival advantage. If they have a survival advantage, they'll be passed down genetically. So it is an alternative theory to the creator theory. And then you get into the kind of neat kind of nuance about this whole thing. And this is where my thinking has opened up so much because of people like Andrew Klavan. What you could actually end up with there is the idea that you can take the Stephen Hawking and the, Richard Dawkins argument to its conclusion and say, no, moral right and wrong are in fact genetically coded, and it's something that we just shared and passed down as an advantage. But you can actually go to a level above that and say, if it is true that there is a creator and that the creator does have certain moral objectives and moral truths and moral imperatives, how would he actually pass those down to people? If free will is free will, he can't just stick it in our head. So you could make it out of the stuff we're made out of. You could say that all of these objective truths and realities and so on are encoded in our genetics for a reason by the creator. Which one of these it is, I don't know, but I do know that we are at 4, 3, 2, 1. Psh. All right. That was one. Not too bad. That's actually kind of fun. Kind of fun. And that's not a little question either, by the way, folks. That's not like, what's your favorite color or what's the unladen airspeed of an African swallow? That's a fairly deep issue. We got a couple of those. Actually kind of fun. So that was one down. Let's do number 2 from Susan Speakman. Would love to hear your comments on Cantors' defeat and what it may mean for us in November. 3, 2, 1, and mark. Susan, I've been very, very busy working on this firewall. It's taken an awful lot of work on my part, and I took a little break last night, went out to an event, and went to a nightclub where we watched the 2000 election reactions and so on. And I was told there as I walked into the club that Cantor had lost. I hadn't followed the story, so all of that to preface the fact that I don't really know the details of what actually happened there, but the fact that I don't know anything about it certainly won't slow me down from giving you my determined opinion on it. My understanding is that Cantor lost to a Tea Party candidate in Virginia. And if that assumption is in fact correct, and if it's not, you might as well just skip here, but my assumption is that's correct. What does it mean for us in November? It could be, and I suspect it is, a bellwether for the tsunami that I think is going to come in November. And I think the tsunami is going to be even more powerful for the fact that nobody's talking about it, nobody really even expects it. But I actually do believe that the level of disgust with this administration is permeated so much of society that the alternatives to Obama are looking better and better and better. The Tea Party has been extremely well vilified by the media, and it's been slandered by both Obama and the Attorney General and everybody in the press, all of that stuff. They've done a very good job of vilifying the Tea Party. But I think the fact that a Tea Party guy beat what was formerly kind of a conservative icon, Cantor was the guy who had the plan he was pretty much beloved guy not too long ago. The fact that he was defeated by a conservative, more conservative, means that we are starting to see, I think, some of this real groundswell of conservatism, which is coming back as a rebellion against this progressive, catastrophic failure. I've said before, and I don't have time to go into it here, but I think the single greatest weakness of the Tea Party is the name Tea Party. Every day that goes on past the beginning of that speech, I forgot the guy's name, where he basically says, we ought to have a Tea Party and check all this stuff. The Tea Party is the worst name in the world. It sounds prissy, old, dainty. It's awful. It's awful. With that said, these strong conservative candidates the Cantor defeat especially could be the beginning of this sort of bell curve of this incoming wave of rebellion and revulsion against the status quo. And I think that most people have been absolutely demoralized and disgusted at what the progressives are doing to America. And I think that at least on the conservative side of the ticket, people are starting to realize, well, if you have guys in the Republican Party who are in favor of Obamacare, in favor of open immigration, not going to fight on any of these things, they might as well be Democrats. So if you're going to get a guy who's electable like Cantor, but Cantor votes for all this stuff, what's the point? Throw the ball long and go for the win. Hooray, it's good news. And Mark. These are fun. Michael Stack has a question. He says, is there anything that morally differentiates the American conquest of North America apart from past human migrations, or would you say it was mostly the same, just that industrial capabilities made it happen faster and on a larger scale? And Mark. Anti-Americans have two bludgeons that they use to whip the United States. And listen, they're right. One of them is slavery, and one of them is the treatment of the Native Americans in America, the conquest of Europeans in the New World. Is it different? It's not. And at the same time, it is. And here's what's different about it. The American conquest of North America is no different than the constant back and forth of cultures and tribes and ethnicities that happened throughout Europe back to the prehistoric days. Now you'll hear Europeans in Belgium and saying the way your massacre of the Indians, your genocide of the Indians. What happened to the Franks and the Gauls, and what happened to the Angles, and where did the Saxons go? What happened to the Celts? What happened to all of these sub-tribes that were just back and forth over the bloodiest ground on the face of the earth, which is Europe? Where did those stories go? Those stories are lost in prehistory. They're lost in prehistory. The fundamental sort of racial, religious, tribal structures of Europe have been in place for hundreds and hundreds of years. France and Germany, back really to the end of the Roman Empire. So what's different about the American settlement is it's the first time in history that you were dealing with the kind of standard sort of migrations of people against essentially a blank slate, against sort of a tabula rasa. What's so hard to believe about this particular story, the way it's told, though, is you're led to believe that these Europeans came in and just genocidally decimated this Indian culture, which the way the story is told is a monolithic kind Indian culture where the Indians love homosexuals and they love the women, and the women are treated, and they come into it's all just giant democracy of loving, caring, kind, recycling people. Well, it's just not true. The Indians actually, prior to the arrival of Western Europeans, the Indians did the exact same thing to each other that the white man did to the Indians. They conquered and displaced and tribed and raided and enslaved their own people. The Comanches especially were well known for this. So when you think about Indian culture as the Sioux on the horse, don't forget that there were no horses in North America before the Europeans came. The idea of an Indian on a horse is the result of Western civilization in North America. Prior to the West, there were no horses in North America, and the Indians were just tribes of people that were going against each other. So no, there's nothing different or unique that happened in America in terms of displacing one tribe or group of people by another. What's different and unique was it was the first time in modern history where there was a blank slate that you could say, look at what's happening. And I think that's why that particular case is different than other ones, and we're out. This is not easy, but it's fun. Okay, ready? Number 4. Question first. David Deering asks, wouldn't repealing the 16th Amendment and eliminating the IRS be both a good foundation for a conservative campaign movement and perhaps the single biggest thing we could do toward eliminating the mechanisms by which elected officials control the behavior of the citizens and reward their crony contributors? And Mark. David, you really hit the essence of that question there in the first paragraph. Wouldn't it be a good idea eliminating the IRS as a foundation for a conservative campaign movement? David, if you can't sell eliminating the IRS to the American people, you as I often say, are probably in the wrong line of work. How hard is it to go to the American people with a plan to abolish the IRS? And so the follow-up question is, why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we doing it? Why don't we just run with this ball and say to people, hey, would you like not to pay income tax? We're not saying we're all going to live like savages without a government. Don't you think there's a better way to do it? Wouldn't you like to control the amount of money that's taken out of your pocket by determining how much is taken by the amount that you buy, or conversely through a flat tax where everybody's paying the same rate? The more you make, the more you make. It's not the more you make, the more you lose. The more you make, the more you make. Everybody pays the same percentage of their income. It's fair and it's equal. It's just the same thing as the story I've used about people in line at the shopping, at a grocery store. The person in front of you may make more money than you do. The person behind you may make less. We all pay in the same sales tax. If I buy more stuff and more expensive stuff, I pay more money. But nobody gets to look at my wallet and tell me if I'm a good guy or a bad guy. We're all paying a flat tax. So there are certainly practical solutions to this. There's the idea that you are getting the invasive, weaponized IRS out of our lives, the one government agency that people fear the most. Used to be the only one they fear, but now it's one of the one they fear the most. Now the Bureau of Land Management has AR-15, so be prepared. But with all of that said, if you can't run against this kind of progressive income tax and this invasion of not only your privacy, but your invasion of, they impound your house and your car and put you in jail, and they have unlimited power. And if they disagree with you, you lose. How do you not run against this? How do you not win with this? So you can also make the argument that eliminating the progressive income tax would free up so much economic might, and that the growth and the prosperity that would follow would be incredible. And you could also write it in such a way, say, hey, listen, we're going to write the bill so that it's a 2-year or a 3-year hiatus. And if after 3 years it's not better and we add another bill, it will automatically revert to the old IRS. Whatever you want to do to comfort the poor crying progressives who are going to have a cow over the fact that they can't take other people's money legally, can't hold them up at gunpoint. That's really the issue, right? That's really the issue, is getting down to it. But the fact that we're not running on this is yet another indication of the fundamental problem of conservative politics, period. Conservative politics, period. The problem with conservative politics is the conservative philosophy and ideal is less government, less power, less influence, less everything. And the only people willing to go to Washington and implement those politics are politicians. And politicians don't want less. They want more. So our fundamental disadvantage compared to the progressives is the progressives want more control, and the kind of politicians who like control are people who go to Washington. We have people to send to Washington whose entire purpose is to eliminate Washington. It's tough. Okay. Here we go. Jacob Belchak asks sorry. Jacob Belchak asks, in 3 minutes or less, Bill, expound on the pro-life versus pro-choice argument. Which are you and why? Ready, set, go. Yeah, we'll handle the toughest social issue in America in 3 minutes or left. Actually, 2 minutes and 50 seconds or less. Look, the reason that the abortion issue is so powerful and so divisive is because it pits fundamental beliefs in ways that are often in opposition to each other. The fundamental sanctity of human life, it should be the number one moral imperative of every civilized and decent person. It goes without saying. Likewise, our value system says that absence of coercion, freedom, and choice, and the ability to do what you want to do and be left alone is also a fundamental primary aspect of our moral code. And when you put these two things in opposition, you end up with genuine, serious issues and conflicts. So let's deal with the life issue first. The reason that there is a pro-choice movement in the first place, and if you look at all of their messaging, everything's very clear. That embryo is not a person, because if it was a person, it would be murder. So they've positioned themselves, the pro-choice movement. Let's just cut to the chase. Let's get rid of pro-choice and pro-life. These are pejorative terms. They're advertising terms. We're talking about a procedure, so let's just get down to the factual basis of it. The pro-abortion people are making the case that this is not a human being. It's not a person. It is a collection of cells, just like giving blood or cutting off a fingernail. And therefore, this is a choice. No one tells me how long to cut my hair. So if I can do that with those cells, why can't I do this with those cells? The problem with that argument is, and I don't hear anybody making this case, is that that embryo is not your cells. Women say, this is my body, it's my choice. It's not your body. It's in your body, but it's not your body. You take the cells of that embryo and you take them to a lab, and they will not come back as the same as your cells. I could take a fingernail clipping from you, and I can DNA identify you with 100% accuracy. If I do the same thing from your embryo, it's a different person. It's not you, it's a different person. Likewise, there's only two places on the spectrum between conception and birth, although some pro-choice people are, pro-abortion people are talking about being able to do it after the baby's born, and that is conception and birth. There's nothing that happens between those two positions that's a landmark. With that said, we have the issue of, do you have the right to enforce upon people, your moral view on things? If people consider it a group of cells, then they don't. So my answer would be, I am now anti-abortion, and I kind of, we'll go back to the traditional things. I used to be a little more pro-choice. Now I'm considerably pro-life. I don't know if you have the ability to coerce people with the government, because when it all comes down to it, I think this is a great moral evil, but I don't believe you can enforce virtue on people from above. I think that has to come from within. So I think the answer is to get the government out of it and get people to make the right decision for the right reasons. Hey, this one includes some media, so this will be kind of nice. Here we go. Ted Yantis asks, your thought on LA street artist Sabo and his ability to get out a conservative message in Hollywood. And Mark, as it turns out, I've met LA street artist Sabo, and I met him just before a Ted Cruz event here in LA. He had done, I wish I'd grabbed it, I hadn't, he'd done a picture of Ted Cruz as a kind of a tatted out gangster, really kind of ripped guy, with tattoos all over him. It said Cruz, and had the abs, and he's standing there shirtless, leaning against the wall, and he's got a cigarette draping out of his mouth. And it was revolutionary. It was a revolutionary piece of propaganda. By the way, propaganda has got such a terrible name. I guess I'm certainly not defending what propaganda has been maligned as. Most people think propaganda is a lie. Propaganda is not a lie. Propaganda it's a sales technique. Propaganda is advertising your political position. Propaganda is advertising. If you're telling the truth in your advertising, then propaganda is not only not evil, it's a positive good. If you're lying in your advertising, making false claims, then propaganda is in fact a lie. With that said, this guy Sabo is a propagandist, and he's a propagandist for conservatism, and he's one of the precious few people on the board who has the correct intellectual and philosophical foundations, and at the same time has the rhetorical and creative chops to execute. If you look, again, I don't want to sound like I'm down on my Tea Party peeps, because I've done 70 events. I'm a Tea Party guy. I love the Tea Party. I love everything it stands for. But if you go to a Tea Party event and you look at the brochures and the posters and they're done by housewives. I don't mean any disrespect by that. It's just a fact. It's done by non-professionals. This guy Sabo is a professional, and because he's a professional, his propaganda has real power. So I told you about the Cruz thing. Let's just take a couple that I just grabbed from his website, just so you see the power of what this guy's doing. This one is powerful. If Jon Stewart sees that, and Jon Stewart lives somewhere, I guess Stewart lives in New York, but whatever. If a celebrity sees this, because they've got, what's his name? Sam Jackson is one of them, and Alec Baldwin, these guys. If they're driving down the street and they see this, it bothers them. It makes them angry. It makes them upset and stresses out the guys who are on this poster. And that's important. It's important that they get a little pushback on delivering their show business actor opinions to the rest of us. So that's effective. And it also shows them as tools. It shows them as robots. And that's impressive and important. But this one I just love. I mean, that's bloody brilliant. What do you have to say about that? What is that? The great thing about imagery and this kind of messaging is you don't have to explain. It goes right to your brainstem. That is a flying monkey from The Wizard of Oz. Who controls the flying monkeys of The Wizard of Oz? Well, it's actually the Wicked Witch of the West, and the Wicked Witch of the West's name is right there on the poster, and that is why this guy's very, very important. Okay. We're halfway, more than halfway, I guess. Here we go. Kurt Leining says, War on Boys. Do elementary school zero tolerance policies contribute to teenage violence? And Mark. I'd never considered whether or not these policies, these anti-boy policies, anti-male policies, contribute to violence? That's an interesting question. I'll get to that in a minute. The one thing they are doing is they are, as I mentioned in the Light Loudon Stratosphere Lounge, they are telling boys that they are defective females, that they're just defective females. When elementary school teachers tell a group of boys, you're too loud, you're not sharing enough, you're not in touch with your feelings. Why are you looking out the window? Why are you climbing that tree? Why did you pick up that stick like a gun? Why are you running around and making noise? You should share more. You're not sharing your feelings. Why aren't you more emotional? All this constant barrage against little boys is telling them that they're defective females. It's just this. It's the sort of the clinical definition of boyhood as psychiatric disease that needs treatment through medication. And that is going to cause us enormous problems. We're already seeing enormous problems with this. Pajama boy is the future if we don't do something about it. Pajama boy's the future. This weak, pathetic, sad, sort of, what is the word I'm looking for? These kind of, there's some species where the male is just this parasitic sort of, he's like a sperm carrier. He attaches himself to the female briefly and then he's eaten by her or whatever the case may be. That's what Pajama Boy is. He is the elimination of manhood to be replaced with maleness. And all he really is, honestly, is he's a sperm donor that makes children possible. He is a child. He's not a man. He's a defective female. When you see grown men these days, and LA is the bloody capital of the world for this kind of thing, when you see grown men shrieking because there's a spider in the bathroom, or calling an exterminator because there's a spider in the bathroom, or maybe a bat flies into your room or something and you have to vacate the premises, that is the destruction of manhood, and we are going to pay a price for this because bad men are not being eliminated. Bad men are reproducing like crazy all over the world, and they're violent and aggressive, and the only thing that can stop bad men is good men. So we got that to deal with. Now, as far as causing violence, I suspect it's probably true in small numbers of cases. But look, if you're a kid and you're a boy and you have aggressive instincts because you're supposed to, because aggression and violence are built into the structure of being male, true all across virtually every species in the world. It's part of the survival of the fittest. It's part of the drive that keeps the species strong. Now, I'm not social Darwinist and think that the weak should just be killed, but aggression and action are important, and not only important, they're essential. They're primal, essential life forces. If you're telling boys that they cannot exhibit this in normal, healthy ways, like climbing trees and picking up sticks and going bang, bang, if you deny them that's got to go somewhere, and most of them will just turn into Pajama Boy, but a few of them are going to turn into Columbine killers, and I suspect we're going to see more of that in the future. All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go. Justin R. White asks, Ben Shapiro on Breitbart has suggested a Rico prosecution of the Obama administration. Thoughts? And Mark. Look, Ben Shapiro is my boss now, so if he says it's a good idea, then I think it's awesome. Look, if you were to start Rico prosecutions, let's say we had the House and the Senate, which I think is looking very, very likely, and we start Rico prosecutions of the Obama administration, while Obama's still in power, we're going to get exactly the kind of blowback and the kind of thrashing that we got with Ken Starr and Bill Clinton. Now, that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. It just means it's not the smart thing to do. And I will come back to the right thing to do. But the reason it's a stupid thing to do is very, very simple. It's not because it's not true. It's not because it's not important. It's not because it's not necessary. It's all of those things. Ben is exactly right. It is, in fact, a racketeer-influenced, corrupt organization. The Democratic Party is involved with voter fraud, involved with the actual breaking of existing laws through their immigration policies, the non-enforcement of laws they don't like. This is all racketeer-influenced, corrupt organization. It's the definition of RICO. So he's absolutely right. But if we do it before 2016, we will fail. And the reason we'll fail is because of the horrific injustice in the American system today, which is the lack of a free press. I don't want a conservative press. I've said this 100 times. I'll say it 101 times. I don't want a conservative press. I want a free and accurate press that holds everybody's feet to the fire. Where is it likely to make errors as anybody else? The reason we're not making errors now is because we're not allowed to. Liberals are protected by the media, and the media will thrash us and destroy us. And we have to accept that. I did this bamboo spears thing where I said I was raised to be a fighter pilot, born to be a fighter pilot. I want to get in supersonic aircraft and shoot down communists and drop, ordnance on them. The fact of the matter is, politically, I wake up and realize I don't get to be the fighter pilot. I'm the VC guy with a bamboo spear. I don't like it. In fact, it disgusts me, but that's the facts of the matter. The media influence in America is overwhelming air superiority, and my team doesn't have it. And I can cry about it and complain about it all I want to, which is what you do when you're a wish-fulfilling liberal. If you're a conservative who's committed to reality, you have to accept the reality of the game. This is the cards we're holding. We don't like it, but there's nothing we can do about it, which means that we have to understand that the media headwind is overwhelming. So the answer, I think, is this. We don't do it now. We wait until we get the presidency back, and then when we have somebody who can make an argument, like Ted Cruz, like Ronald Reagan, then we do it. And we do it for a very specific reason, and I think we do it with a very clear objective. We do an investigation of everything that happened during the Obama years, and if stuff that Obama did precedes back into the Bush administration, we don't block that out either. We go in there and we root out the problems, we expose them to daylight, and this is the critical point. We make the case, we win the case, but we do not prosecute the individuals. We do not prosecute them when there's no threat of putting them in jail. We just need to get it out there so people know what happened. All right. The next couple are fun. The next one's fun, then one's like, okay. And then the other two are fun. Ready? Here we go. Isaac Tiemens asks, thoughts on SpaceX and Dragon V2. SpaceX, as you know, is a private space company founded by Elon Musk. It's taken a bunch of government contracts. Some arch-conservatives think that's evil, that he's taking government subsidies. I'm not one of those people. The Dragon capsule is the SpaceX vehicle that can be used as a cargo capsule unmanned. Also can do a pressurized version, which hasn't flown yet. They did do the test flights of the manned vehicle without people in it. Perfect mission. As a matter of fact, the private space flight aspects of SpaceX, their developmental record, I think, is better than anybody. I think they're better than Boeing and Lockheed Martin. I think they're better than North American. They're superb. What's interesting about SpaceX and Dragon now is that the Russians, who we had been depending on because they're our friends, aren't our friends anymore. And they are threatening, if they have not already threatened, they're just not going to take us to our space station, which we paid, 90% of? By the way, let me say this about the space station. I've said this before, but it needs to be said again. I was interviewing an astronaut, NASA astronaut, 3 or 4 years ago over at PJTV. And we were talking about the station. I said, why aren't we using the station to build interstellar or at least interplanetary, I never mean to say interstellar, interplanetary vehicles or at least lunar vehicles, something that can be assembled in Earth orbit to explore the moon and the solar system. Why aren't we building that? And he said, the station's not really good for that. Why not? Well, because it's in such a high inclination. I know what an orbital inclination is. The inclination of the space station is set at such an angle relative to the ecliptic where everything else is, the other planets and the moons. The space station is set at such a high orbital inclination that it's very, very difficult in terms of energy and delta V to get out into the solar system because you're at such an angle with the station. Why is the station in such a high angle? My understanding of the space station when it was being sold to the American people was that this was exactly what it was built for. And the NASA guy, as a big spokesman of NASA, said, well, we had to do that so that the Russians could get to the station. Why do the Russians have to get to the station? Because they're going to build part of the station. How much of the station? 10%? Let me make sure I understand this. In order to get 10 or 20% of the station built, we're going to destroy the purpose of the station? Yep. That's your answer. That's your answer. So it's up there for politics, and now we can't even get to our own space station because the Russians don't want to take us. Because the only way we can get to the space station now that the shuttle's been retired and there is no American space transportation system is through the Russians. And the Russians are having a little conniption fit, so we don't get to go to our own station. Brilliant. Thank you very much, politicians. That's awesome. So prior to this Crimean adventure on the part of Putin, Elon Musk looked like a sort of a weird sort of a challenger. All of a sudden, he's the only guy on the field that can get us to our own space station. And I think that this Russian adventurism in the Crimea will be a windfall, not only for SpaceX, but for the private exploration of space, where I put all of my hopes and dreams for the future. In a strange sort of way, Putin in the Crimea may save the future of humanity. Okay. This one's fun. Ready? And, question first. Jack Stephenson asks, ironically or not, I don't know which, why is killing brown people so great? And Mark. This is the great criticism labeled against the Americans since World War II and maybe even during World War II, this idea that this racism and this imperialism and all of this capitalism is useful for killing brown people. They're not real people. And, we go out and kill brown people for oil. We kill brown people for resources. We kill brown people or black people for magnesium. We kill them for their territory. It's a giant goddamn lie. It's an absolute lie, and it needs to be called that from the beginning. It's not that at all. Let's look at some facts, shall we? During World War II, the Allies, in the person of the United States and Great Britain, firebombed Nazi Germany, which is the most white group of people on the face of the earth. They are Aryans. They made a case of being Aryans. American bombers, often escorted by fighter planes flown by black pilots in the Tuskegee Airman Squadron, bombed the whitest people on the face of the earth into the Stone Age with firebombs. The firebombing of Dresden probably killed 100,000 people, may have been more than that. It's certainly in that number. That's more people than died at Hiroshima. So this idea that we don't attack white people, really, it's all just take the gloves off for the brown people, is just patently false from the beginning. From the beginning. We had 2 world wars with the whitest people on the planet. And off we went. Our adversary during the Cold War for 25 or 30, 40 years is the Russians. They're as Caucasian as they get because the Caucasus are in Russia. So the argument falls flat on its face in the beginning. Now, as far as the brown people actually killed by U.S. military in Vietnam and so on, in Korea, let's have a little look at that argument. Why don't we? In Korea, the war started because of American hegemony. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, that's not actually it at all, is it? It's the socialists and the communists who are making this charge against Americans as liking to kill brown people that launched the Korean War. Communist aggression launched the Korean War. And Americans, white Americans, went to die in frozen wastelands to fight for the freedom of brown people. That's what actually happened in the Korean War, and the same thing happened again in the Vietnam War. The freaking communists, that'd be you guys leveling this charge, launched an unprovoked invasion against other brown people, and we white people, including the black people and brown people in America, went to the other side of the world and lost 50,000 of our people killed defending the freedom of other brown people over there. So you can take this brown person argument and you can stick it where the sun doesn't shine. There's not a speck of truth to it, not a particle of truth to it. It's a giant ongoing lie that's been foisted on us, and the most fundamental look at the history of what actually happened shows it to be the lie that it is. Now, I have no control over where the bad people in the world come from. For a while, they came from Nazi Germany. They come from Russia. They come from all over the place. If the fact is that most of the people in the world are brown, well, then I guess most of the people that we're going to have to deal with who have a problem with us, who launch attacks on us using airplanes, let's say, that we put innocent civilians in, those people are going to have to be dealt with. And we're not going to not deal with them because they're brown. Okay, I actually like that one a lot. It was kind of cool. 2 to go. Vince Yoder asks, when you start up the Free Frontier Starfleet facilities in Idaho, will you power it with a thorium reactor? And Mark, I took this idea of the Free Frontier, which I've shared with many of you several times before, to visit. I can't even get this sentence out without really believing it. We went up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I sat there with Burt Rutan and a couple of other engineers, great guys, and I told him about this idea. And he said, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. And my other friend up there, Brent, said, if you're talking about actually putting something like this someplace, if you're talking about a private space program, raising money from the American people, and then building a space program by contracting out to people like Bigelow and SpaceX and all that other thing, you're talking about an engineering center and a science center. The state of Idaho would be very interested in putting money into that kind of thing. And I looked out over Lake Coeur d'Alene, and on the far shore out there, I saw kind of in my mind a series of really cool low buildings that looked like they belonged there. They were cool and clean. They weren't obtrusive, but they were neat. And I thought, man, that's it. That's where we'll put our space program. And that'll be Starfleet Command on the lakes of Lake Coeur d'Alene instead of in San Francisco where bad things would have happened to it. So that was where this idea of a Starfleet Command came from. And the question is, would I power it by a thorium reactor? Honestly, Vince, I'd power my toothbrush with a thorium reactor if I could find one small enough. The problem is not whether or not I would do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat. For those of you who are not in the know, thorium reactors are a form of nuclear reactor that, because it doesn't use high concentrations of uranium in one place to generate a very, very high heat in a very small area, displaces the reaction, warms things incrementally. It is incapable of melting down. Now, sometimes people would say, oh, we can't have a meltdown in this reactor because we have all these mechanical fail-safes. Mechanical fail-safes can fail. They didn't fail at 3 Mile Island, but they did fail in Russia because they turned them off and they didn't build them in the first place. But thorium reactors cannot melt down. It's not like they cannot melt down because something may go wrong. They can't melt down because physics will not allow them to melt down. But the problem is, Vince, is not whether or not I would put one in to power the thing. I'd power everything by these thorium reactors. You have these self-contained reactors. They're 20, 30 megawatts. They go into the ground. They're the size of a school bus, let's say. They don't need to be refueled. They're down there for 25 or 30 years, completely self-contained. They cannot melt down because simply cannot melt down. And they put 25, 30 megawatts out of the ground for 30 years. They cost 7, 8, 10, $12 million, something like that. I'd have them everywhere. I'd have them everywhere. If you have a thorium reactor in your neighborhood, you can run the air conditioner all day and all night, and no one cares, not even the carbon, because there is no carbon. Even if you buy that global warming thing, it doesn't matter because it's carbon-free. You can literally air condition the outdoors. You can irrigate the deserts. The power is free, and it's safe, and it's unlimited. So the problem isn't whether or not I'd use it, Vince. The question is, would I be allowed to? And the answer is no, I would not be allowed to. I would not be allowed to. The government would prevent me from using the safe, clean, limitless source of power. And so once again, it's not technology, it's politics. That's the enemy. There's a certain skill to be able to get a sentence out pretty much within a second of when you want to. And I've been coming in within a second or two. I'm pretty impressed with myself. I may take myself out to dinner afterwards, and who knows? Maybe we'll make an evening out of it. One to go. Matt Hindelang asks, Russia plans to colonize the moon by 2030 and their first robotic rovers to explore the lunar surface 2 years from now. Where does that leave us? And Mark. Well, Matt, if Russia does in fact colonize the moon by 2030, they'll only be 60 years behind us, 6 decades behind us. Our grandparents walked on the moon. I forget what the number is. It's something shocking, but it's something like nobody born after 1925 has walked on the moon. Not before, after. I think it was 1925. Think about that. The only people that have walked on the moon are octogenarians. Terrifying. So, if Russia is in fact going to colonize the moon by 2030, what does colonize mean? They're going to put a lander down there? Congratulations. Congratulations. And same for the Chinese, by the way. You're going to put 2 men on the moon? Fabulous. Good for you. Boy, you guys are really awesome. We did it 40 years ago. I don't really much care about what the Russians are going to do on the moon. I care about what we're going to do on the moon. And what I want to do on the moon comes back to this free frontier thing. I want to stay on the moon. And I don't ever want to come back. I'm not saying the individual should come back. One of the things I've come to realize about space exploration late in life, because when I was a kid, 6 years old up until about 45, 50 years old, I thought, man, one-way mission to Mars, I'm done. Live on Mars, done. No, I don't want to live in a tin can for the rest of my life. I don't. I'd like to go to Mars. I'd like to go to Jupiter. I could put up with living in a tin can for 2 years or 5 years or something like that. But I'd like to think that someday I'll come home and move out to a ranch in Montana and breathe clean air and maybe ride a horse and look at the stars and live like a human being. So when I say Americans in space forever, I mean we rotate them in and out. And that's good because everybody should get a chance to walk on the moon. And if you decide to be a member of Free Frontier, you may get your chance. You may get to walk on the moon for $9.95 a month, and we'll talk about that some other time. So the question is really, will the Russians colonize the moon by 2030? I doubt it. I doubt it. They got big plans for other things. It's much harder than it looks. Nobody realizes. Actually, when you get down to it, Apollo may be technologically what the founding fathers were politically. A collection of the best and the brightest that just may not ever exist again. There's some pretty compelling evidence that human intelligence has been falling since the mid-1880s. Certainly the guys who ran the Apollo program, the technicians, the engineers, and the flight test crews, pilots, far smarter than we are today. We have computers, and that's a big advantage, and that's good. And I'm not saying that we can't find people that smart, but the general population base in 1960 was far, far, far smarter than we are. So we're going to have to be more selective. We're going to have to go out and find more people. But back to what we were talking about earlier, if we put these people in one place and give them some money and get out of their way, you will not believe what we're capable of doing. So I don't know what the Russian plans or the Chinese plans for colonization are for the moon, but I want a permanent colony on the moon because there's useful resources on the moon, helium-3 and a bunch of other things. Mostly I want them in orbit because I want to get to the asteroids. And if we get to the asteroids, Ceres may have, the biggest asteroid, Ceres may have more fresh water than the Great Lakes. There may be more water on Ceres than we could ever use. Water means hydrogen for fuel and oxygen for living, so rock on. Okay, that's 12 of them. I knocked them out, and I'll be darned. There's something really compelling to this format. I'd actually had a thought that maybe time over target might be kind of, limited by the 3-minute thing. But the more I think about it, the more I begin to realize that the 3-minute rule means that you get a concise argument. Because I tend to wander, as everybody knows. And occasionally I'll see people saying, oh, Bill's gone off the rails again on Stratosphere Lounge. The reason we're doing time over target is a separate thing, and that this is not going to be part of time over target, is not going to be part of the Stratosphere Lounge, is because I think going off the rails is the charm of this show. But as a test and as an adventure, I think this went swimmingly. I'd have to give the entire idea an A+. I have to tell you, I think that went so much better than I thought it was going to go. And it's a very encouraging thing for me because I had a look, and I still do have a few concerns about it. But many of those have been assuaged by this evening's example. It was really fun. And it wasn't exactly easy, but it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So, thanks. Thanks. A great thing about the live comment stream is the Chase Lounge said, I like it when you go off, Bill. I kind of like it when I go off, too. Unpredictable. Usually questions that either asked ironically or intentionally. Why do you like to kill brown people thing? Those things make me angry. And when I get angry, I have the ability to push facts out at a higher data rate. And Allo Conson? Hello, Allo, longtime supporter, said that this show is a personal think tank. He said it's your personal think tank. But it's not my personal think tank. It's your personal think tank. To the degree it's a think tank. That's what I'd like it to be. I'd like it to be your personal think tank. Maybe someday we'll find somebody smarter and get them involved. But for the time being, I'm afraid we're all we have. So let's use that. That's what I'd like it to be. I'd like it to be your personal think tank. And of all the feedback I get, the feedback I certainly appreciate the most is the feedback that says, thank you for the work you're doing. It gives me ammunition at the water cooler. That's ultimately what I'd like to be remembered for. It'd be nice, because, I really have to say this. None of this is really my stuff. I don't come up with any of this. Every now and then I'll get something like, somebody said, no RK tonight? Can't have an episode without RK. When I read something like RK Theory by Anonymous Conservative, I look at it and go, I wish I'd thought of that. I'm not smart enough to think of that. But I think what I will say is it's interesting to put these things together in a way that makes sense. And that, I suppose I'm good at. I know how to personalize and humanize a story. I know how to tell that's really it, right? Ultimately, I know how to tell a story. So if I have the data, I can tell a story with the data. The Benghazi firewall is just telling the story of what happened. And no one knows how to do that. It shouldn't be that hard. But in any event, that's, oh wow. That's really sweet. I just got an email from David Horowitz thanking me for the Benghazi video. As you know, I'm still at PJTV, very happy with the work I do at PJTV. I don't, whatever comes up next, if it's an afterburner or a firewall, they get the best work I have. But David Horowitz is a soldier, and he's a fighter, and he's a hero of mine, and I'm very happy to be working with him. It's a high honor. In any event, all I really do is try to look at what's out there, find out what appears to be true, test it, make sure I'm as right as I can be, and then tell the story of it. And I really just do that. I'm going to say I do it for you, although I do it for you and for me. I do it for the country. I do it for the country. I do it for the ideas and the ideals. That's what I do. And I to the degree that time over target allows you to custom design your ammo loadout, then that would make me very, very happy. So it's a really neat comment there, Aloe, that I'm, that I'm my own think tank. I'm not my own think tank. I'd like to be our think tank. I'd like to be your think tank. So let's look at time over target that way. Let's just consider time over target as a chance for you to ask a specific question. And the sharper the question, the more likely it is we're going to take it. For you to ask a specific question about something you need some ammo on. Because when people said you're like a guy passing out ammunition, that's the highest calling I think that I could have. With that said, I'm going to continue to do this political stuff till I can't stand up anymore, and then I'll do it sitting down. So that's not going away. But what we are going to be doing, I've been threatening this for years now, but I mean it, so much of the holdups and the delays and everything, things just take longer than I think. Things just seem simple to me, and they're not. Things like, it took 3 weeks to negotiate this lease. I had no idea that was going to happen, but it did. But all of this just to say that once we get this office space set up, we start getting this members-only content out, hopefully we get our membership numbers up, then it's time to go out and get the money for the movies. I was going to put Common Sense Resistance first, ahead of Big Bat Problems, but as Common Sense Resistance gets more and more developed in my mind, it looks more and more expensive. And it should, because we're now talking about showing the world 40 years from now. And we're talking about gunfights, and we're talking about robots, and we're talking about drones, and we're talking about a quad-rotor chase through Los Angeles at nighttime, where parts of the city are just blacked out and nothing but bonfires, and other parts are little arcologies where the giant omni-state has set up its fortresses. That's actually more expensive. Originally, I thought that Common Sense Resistance would be more of a kind of a found footage thing that we could just shoot down in some abandoned buildings and stuff. And I thought since it's going to be cheaper and a little more kind of topical, do that ahead of Big Bat Problems. But I wrote Big Bat Problems because Aurora was too expensive. Big Bat Problems takes place mostly in a Winnebago and in abandoned buildings and out in the middle of the desert. And I love that movie. I love it. I love it. I think Big Bat Problems, which I haven't gone into a lot of detail yet on, Big Bat Problems is funny, but it's scary and it's cool. And it's going to be a success. So once we get the office space, 1st of July, we're guaranteed to be in there by the 1st of July. The plan is, just so you all know, once we get the means to get this thing done, I am going to do a week's worth of time over targets, which I will contact the membership with sort of on the sly, and a week worth of Bill Me's, and we'll shoot one of the speakeasies so that we will have at least a week of members-only content in there, and we're going to put that members-only content available to everybody for 1 week. Then we'll just have a big old, put signs up for the garage sale. Everybody come look at the new site, see the new shows. If you want to become a member, you can see the time over target every day, you can see Bill Me every day, and you can see a speakeasy segment for members only once a week. And if you decide not to become a member, that's totally fine with me. I understand times are tough out there, and I understand some people don't want to part with their money on this. I completely get it. I don't have any problem with it at all. Nevertheless, you'd still get a best of Bill Me, a best of time over target, and a free speakeasy once a week. So everybody wins, and then we can get on with the movies. And the reason I brought all this up was to say that while my highest calling so far has been to pass out ammunition and to get comments like that from David Horowitz in real time, the future belongs to the culture. And the future, the real power, I certainly think personally, my full powers will be when I can make the kind of messages where people don't know they're getting a message. And you don't see me at all. You'll hear my voice, don't you worry. You'll hear the voice in the characters speaking and in the actions. But I'll be behind the camera by and large. I'll always give myself a cameo because I'm an unrepentant, vain guy when I get down to done. But by and large, if you can produce movies that are not political movies, I'm not going to make conservative movies. I'm going to make movies where the heroes have conservative values, and we don't say the word conservative or Republican ever. We had a 16-year-old guy who wants to be a SEAL who's got his own AR-15, and he's out there killing aliens, and he's trying to be stopped by the government because the government wants aliens to kill people, because the more killing that gets done by aliens, the more people want a big state solution. That's not a political thing. That's a 16-year-old kid who's good with a gun and crazy about this smoking hot 17-year-old girl, and everything else is just terrific. those movies will go out and they will be seen by millions of people. If I'm successful, they'll be seen by tens of millions of people. And they will be seen by the kind of people who would never listen to me for a minute. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I don't blame a 16-year-old boy for not watching the Benghazi video. If I was 16, I wouldn't watch it either. I don't blame them. And people think that the youth are Obama supporters because they listen to Obama's speeches. They've never listened to Obama in their lives. These people who voted for him, they've never heard a State of the Union speech. They couldn't tell you what his policies are. All they know is that Gaga likes Obama and Kanye likes Obama and Clooney likes Obama. So I like Obama. So that's how it works, folks. You don't have to like it, but that's the way it is. And when people talk about pop culture has degraded the American people and American people are stupid and they vote for what they feel instead of what they think, true. I'm not sure it was ever much different. It certainly used to be better than it is now. But to say that the pop culture has degraded Americans and then to walk away from it is to not only to admit defeat, which I will not do, period, but it's also a form of contempt. My feeling about the degradation of the intellectual standards of the American people is that they didn't cause it. They were spoon-fed it, and we have to go save them. We have to go save them. So let's go save them doing stuff that they want to see, and frankly, stuff that I want to make. Let's go and make the kind of movies that are just fun to watch. We will have a discussion about this. It's not time to have it right now, but it's something I want to bring up. When we start to get into actual pre-production on the movies, we, Stratosphere Lounge being my feedback loop with kind of the hardcore people who apparently have so little to do with their lives that they're ready to sit and listen to this for an hour at night, we need to have a conversation where I will lay out the case. And the case will be this. In order to be effective and reach people that we're not reaching now, I am probably going to do things in those movies that will probably turn off a lot of people who are already on the team. Primarily, it will be a language issue. With that said, I have learned that overuse of profanity is laziness. No question. No question. But I also know that if I'm going to make the kind of movies that are going to reach people, I'm going to have certain amounts of, have to show a certain amount of skin, and I'm going to have to use a certain amount of language. Those inclusions will no doubt not only turn off, but actually anger people who are supporters of mine now, and rightfully so. They'll see it as a cop-out, and they'll see it as condescension, and they'll also say, and this is their best argument, although the other two are perfectly good too, they'll also say that now you're making something that I can't take my family to. We love you and we support you, but you put all this profanity or whatever, or this sexuality in these movies, and now I can't take my family to see it. That is a genuine concern. It's a real concern, and it's something I've struggled with not just for a couple of weeks. I've struggled with this for 3 or 4 years now. We just got a comment just now came in from Teresa saying that profanity is so unnecessary, except it's not. Except it's not. I don't want to get too much into this. We'll really make a whole evening out of this, but just to say this. On some level, you're absolutely right. On some level, of course, I could tell the story without profanity, but that's not really what I'm trying to do, because the reason that the profanity and sex or nudity would be in the movie is not to say that I couldn't do it without it. There's no question I could do it without it. You may even say it's a better story without it. You may be right about that too. But I think one thing we're going to have to all be on the same page on here is that we are going into the enemy camp to take prisoners and bring them back out. And the more we look like them, the deeper into that camp we're going to get, and the more likely we're going to grab those people and get the credibility that we need to get them out. When I say credibility, I mean just the ability to sit through and watch the rest of it. Now, with all of this said, as with the issue I have with membership versus non-membership, I think there is a solution that it's not perfect, but it's probably the best solution I can come up with. And because I have this conflict that other filmmakers like liberal progressives don't have, I listened to the Young Turks talking about Benghazi thing. I never watched them. Somebody sent me a link for Sync, whatever his name is. And he went off on Benghazi, and it was nothing but 7 minutes of F-bombs and nothing to say other than just profane rage. It's not an argument. That's appalling. It's pathetic. It's weak. So I think probably the answer is this. I have a conflict in the way that Sync doesn't have a conflict. He can swear all he wants to. His people like swearing. It's all they know how to do. They can't make an argument. They're not going to lose people by swearing. He's got nothing but base, profane people following him. So fantastic. Rock on. I have a conflict in terms of trying to keep this thing so that it's doing some good and also getting in there and reaching people and keeping them alive. So what I plan to do is I plan to shoot 2 versions of the thing. I can afford that because we're not talking about nothing but profanity. I can afford to shoot a scene twice where somebody says damn and then somebody says something worse than damn. And I'll put them together. And if I think the version that says something worse than damn is more effective at reaching more people out there, that's what we'll release. But we will have a family-friendly, PG-rated, probably not even PG-13, PG-rated version of all of these things. And those will be available to everybody. And that's about the best I can do. Because no matter how much I understand and appreciate the argument, I don't think it's true. I think if you're going to go after people who are dirty, you got to get dirty to go and get them. And if you don't, they're going to look at you like you don't belong there. These are big issues. Big issues. So my position as of now, it's been evolving, continue to evolve. I will produce a version that is a PG version of everything I do. That's a promise I'm going to make to you right now. It's a promise I'm going to make to you right now. I'll look at this very carefully. But my attitude lately has been that I don't disagree with the degradation of the pop culture. I don't disagree that profanity is a form of weak writing. I don't disagree with any of that, but I also do look at the situation and understand it seems to be the case. So my position will be that if the American people have been put in this box, I'm going to go into that box and try and get them out. But I got to get in that box. I got to get into where they are, and I have to have their trust. And I'm not going to appeal to their trust on an intellectual level. They don't know who I am. I don't want them to know who I am. I want them to go out and see a trailer for a movie and then go to a movie and then see the movie and think, well, it's an action-adventure film, and that little worm is in their head. Anyway, there you go. Somebody just mentioned Mow the Grass was on Deadwood. Deadwood's my favorite show. Deadwood is the best thing I've ever seen. I think Deadwood is my favorite piece of entertainment. I'm not saying it's the best piece of entertainment that's ever been made. It's just my favorite. You can't take the profanity out of Deadwood. You can't. And just to wrap this thing up, I'll go back to something I heard that it really makes sense. Deadwood, by the way, David Woman just asked, again, the comment stream is great, what would Jesus do? Jesus would make a non-profane version. I'm not Jesus. I don't have his power. I don't have his power of persuasion. Deadwood is without question the most profane, obscenity-laced piece of entertainment that has ever been foisted on the American people. And I loved it. I thought it was a brilliant show. Absolutely brilliant. I think Ian McShane in that movie, in that series, is just the best performance of all time. Now, Milch, who produced the show, I think it was Milch, was asked about the profanity, was asked about the over insane profanity. There were drinking games, every time anybody said the C word or the F word, people just knock themselves out drunk because there's so much of it coming out. And they asked Milch, they said, is this how people actually spoke? Did they actually use the F-bomb as often as you do? And he said something that's really profound. I think this is probably the most profound thing I've ever heard an artist say in this format. He said they did not use the F word and they did not use the C word, hyphen word, or the MF hyphen word. They didn't use any of that stuff. But they did use the worst language that they had. So if goddamn this was the worst thing they had, or bastard or whore or something was the worst language that they had, it was the worst language that they used because they used the worst language that they had. Milch's point was they used the worst, harshest language that they had, which is not as harsh as it is today, because the entire aspect of that frontier town was so threatening that the aggressive use of that language was in fact a form of armor and defense. It was a way of saying to strangers who they've never met before, don't you try pulling a gun or a knife on me because I will kill you because I'm a tough MF. And his argument was that if we do not use the worst language that we have, if we only use the worst language that there was in 1880, we are going to sound like that old George Carlin line or something, like where you got a bunch of motorcycle guys going, all right, boys, I'll be right back. I have to tinkle now. Milch was basically saying that we are appealing to a truer truth. And we're not talking about rationalism. We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about objective truth. We're talking about art now, which is a world I happen to move in. We're talking about art. And what Milch was saying was that artistically, it is more honest to the tone of the actual Deadwood for us to use language harsher than they actually used, because from an emotional perspective, they're actually equal. We're both using the worst language that we have. I found that compelling. And as a person who watches actual movies and goes out and sees action movies and adventure movies and horror movies, I've seen it. Now, look, with all of this said, right? With all of this said, I'm not talking about making Deadwood. I'm not talking about making an F-bomb-laden script. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm not even sure I'm going to have the F word in the thing at all. But somewhere in here, many times, I am going to have to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to try and reach the largest number of potential teenage kids watching the movies today, or whether or not I'm going to make a decision to appeal to my conservative base. And if I make a decision to appeal to the base, then I am weakening my effectiveness in terms of getting people who we could get. So here's the short form. I'm going to do this as little as possible, and I'm going to make Herculean efforts to make sure I do it as little as possible. If it calls for it, and I don't think there's a way around it, after much consultation and consideration, I may go for the cultural win with people who we don't have before, and I'll provide an alternative for the people who've made all of this possible. So it's a conversation we should probably have a whole evening talking about this, because it's important. And I'll tell you, I don't know the answer. I may be wrong about this. In fact, there's a good chance I'm wrong about this. So we'll have an evening. We'll talk about it. We'll get some comments. We'll get some questions. Maybe you'll change my mind. I've had my mind changed before. But with that said, we are going to, as Rich just said, you don't win any converts preaching to the choir. Somebody mentioned Jesus earlier. Certainly don't mean to put myself in that category. But my understanding, limited as it is, was that there was a fairly large amount of disgust on the part of the people who follow Jesus to the willingness of Jesus to cavort with prostitutes and lepers and tax collectors and all of the other lowlifes that he went out there and made part of his mission. A lot of people thought, you are degrading yourself, and how can you call yourself the Son of God if you're hanging out with prostitutes? Kind of the argument, I guess that's kind of where I'd like to end up on this thing, right? I mean, by cavorting, by Jesus having conversations and involving himself with criminals and prostitutes, was that an endorsement of those things on his part? Didn't seem to be to me. It seemed to be to me that he was willing to deal with these elements because he realized that they are the ones who are most in need of saving, not the least in need of saving. So anyway, there you go. Teresa just pointed out she walked out of the Navy SEAL Lone Survivor movie because of the language. And Teresa, I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you at all. I understand it. I understand protecting your kids from it. I do understand it. I do. But that's a great example, right? I know Navy SEALs, and I know how they speak, and I know how they don't speak. And if I make them speak the way that people who are offended at that kind of speech would like to hear them speak, they don't sound like SEALs anymore. And that's kind of the essence of what I'm trying to get at, right? That's kind of the essence of what I'm trying to get at. In fact, that's pretty much perfectly it. I know how Navy SEALs speak. So the question is, if you're going to make a movie about Navy SEALs, and this is not just Navy SEALs, by the way, this is how soldiers have spoken throughout history. You look at the guys on Normandy, and the actual answer, apparently, that McAuliffe gave to the Germans wasn't nuts. There was an adjective in front of nuts that adjective was not reproduced in all the stories since then. So the question is, if you're going to make a movie about SEALs, do you want to make them sound like SEALs, or do you want to make them sound so that people will not get offended at what they're talking about. That's the core issue right there. Right there. So, I have an inclination of how I'm going to handle that, but we can discuss this later. I'm not locked on it, and here's why I've had so much struggle with this issue. I struggle with this issue because I know that no matter which decision I make, I'm going to hurt myself. There's no way not to. One decision or the other is going to hurt me one way or another, and I have to figure out which one of those I'm going to take. That's a discussion we can have. Anyway, that's it. Somebody just pointed out, too, David Woman pointed out that Act of Valor had a dearth of saltiness. In other words, language was much better in Act of Valor, which is true. And Act of Valor was made for a more conservative audience. And Act of Valor, I think, was a lot less effective than it could have been. Anyway, that's that. We can come back to this, and we will. And I certainly hope that at the very, very least, if I take a path that you disagree with one way or another, you at least understand I'm doing it from a place of integrity. That it's not just easiness or weakness or venality on my part. It's a difficult, serious question artistically. And I haven't really dealt much with artistic issues and stood on the artistic ground before. But as we start to get into movies, we're going to have to. And that's... it'd be fun. It'd be fun to have a different language, a different conversation. But if I do go down that road, as I said before, I'll make a promise now, and I'll keep this promise. I will shoot. I won't just edit it out. I won't just bleep it out. I will shoot two versions so that there is a version that people can live with. Whether that's the version that goes out there, I don't know. We'll see. My friends, this is what we call in show business high-class problems. Trying to decide whether or not to shoot a second take of something with language that's less offensive in a movie that's being done to promote our values is a high-class problem. Yes, and as Brent pointed out, one thing I can promise you is, because this is who I am, whatever happens, it will not be gratuitous. If it's there, it's going to be necessary. That's that. That's enough. We'll deal with that later. Anyway, it's, hey, look at that, 7:30. Relatively quick show. 90-minute show for us is 139, 140 is piece of cake. But I have to tell you, tonight was a lot of fun and very, very interesting and really kind of cool and actually tremendously encouraging for me to be able to do 12 of them more or less effortlessly in terms of the timing. I was really thinking it was going to be a lot harder than it is. So this, my friends, is the end of Stratosphere Lounge episode 73. And as always, thanks for your insight, your tremendous insight, your tremendous support. And to those people I might have mentioned by name in the comment section, I want to make crystal clear about this. Not only am I not angry with, disagree with you, I think you're probably right. You may be right. I don't know. I will think it over. But I'm happy when people disagree with me, especially when they disagree with me in an intelligent and forceful way. So that's that. Episode 73 is now part of history. Be put up on Olympus where it belongs in a place of glory, viewed by generations down to the end of time as a watchword for their morality and as an example for their behavior, down to the point where we evolve into eight-legged insectoids. They'll still be watching episode 73 and looking up in awe at the wonder of it all. Thanks for everything, guys. We'll see you next week. Oh, crap, real super quick. Somebody asked about the Arroyo. I'm going to put up a post tomorrow. The Arroyo is available on DVD. It's available on Amazon, but it is available on iTunes. It's available on iTunes, and go and look for it. Just search for the Arroyo on iTunes. You see it in HD, and I'm going to put up a post tomorrow for the Arroyo. It's beautiful timing. It's right there. Go to iTunes and search for the Arroyo, and you will find it, and it's a great way to watch it. It really is. Really kind of cool. Until next week, my friends, we'll see you then. I'm Bill Whittle. Take care out there. Hail Vectron.